The day after accepting my crush's confession, I woke up and found myself 10 years in the future. The moment I opened my eyes, a little boy with big, round eyes was standing in front of me, calling me Mom. Still in disbelief, I searched through a dusty storage room and found a wedding photo. But to my shock, the groom in the picture wasn't my crush. It was someone else entirely. I jolted awake, lying in an unfamiliar bed. My mind was a complete mess as I tried to figure out what was going on. Before I could process anything, a small figure suddenly dashed in from the doorway. I instinctively shut my eyes, pretending to still be asleep. The sound of tiny footsteps approached slowly, followed by the gentle touch of a soft, little hand resting on my forehead. A child's delicate voice started rambling about what they had eaten recently and what they had been doing. Just as I was wondering about my connection to this child, the next thing he said made my eyes fly open in terror. Mom, you've been sick for days now. Why haven't you woken up yet? You don't like me, but I really miss you. Please wake up. Mom, please. Mom. This kid just called me Mom. My eyes snapped open, and I saw a little boy with big eyes and a small mouth staring at me in shock. Before I could say a word, he turned and bolted out of the room. Oh my God. Just last night, I had accepted my crush's confession, and now, I had a kid this big. After the child ran off, I immediately grabbed my phone and called my best friend, Emily. I had no idea what had happened in the past 10 years, but my phone had barely any messages, and all my old friends had completely disappeared from my contacts. The phone rang several times before Emily finally picked up. What do you want? Her voice was cold, so cold that I almost didn't recognize it. I scratched my face awkwardly. Her sudden aloofness left me momentarily speechless. When I didn't respond, she seemed to grow impatient. Ava, say something. Didn't you say you'd never contact me again? Oh God, what exactly had I done in these 10 years? I hesitated for a moment before saying, Emily, I know you like to act cool, but can you not be cold to me right now? I just want to ask you something. The most important question I had at that moment. Who is my husband? Emily fell silent for a long moment before finally replying. Ava, did you forget to take your meds today? Huh, so 10 years later, Emily had learned how to insult people in a roundabout way. I'm serious. I snapped. She sighed. Forget it. Just stay where you are. I'm in line for a COVID test. I'll come find you later. Her voice sounded serious. Wait, so this wasn't time travel? I was just sick? Also, COVID test? What's that? And why did she have to line up for it? Just as I put down my phone, a woman who looked like a housekeeper knocked on the door and cautiously asked if I was feeling better and whether I wanted to eat something. So, my mystery husband was rich enough to hire housekeepers? I nodded, and in no time, an array of exquisite dishes was placed before me. I picked up my chopsticks and started eating. To my surprise, everything was exactly the kind of food I loved. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the little boy from earlier peeking in from outside the door. I suddenly realized, this might be my son. My eyes lit up as I waved at him and said, Hey, kid, come here. The child hesitated, then timidly walked over to my bedside. Why did he look a little scared of me? Wait, did I marry some rich guy and become an evil stepmother? Scratching my head, I softened my voice and asked, Sweetheart, what's your name? How old are you? The little boy's chubby cheeks scrunched up, full of grievance, as if he couldn't understand why his own mother didn't remember his name. Mommy, my name is Ethan. My nickname is Sam. I'm 4.5 years old. So, I really didn't end up with my crush after all. I continued questioning him. Sam. Let's test you. What's your dad's name? Sam proudly answered. My dad's name is Sam. Before he could finish, a voice interrupted from the doorway. You're here? It's time to go downstairs and study. Don't disturb Madam while she's resting. It was the housekeeper. She had suddenly appeared at the door. Cutting Sam off, she quickly turned to me, her face full of apprehension. Madam, I'm so sorry. I should have been watching Sam more carefully. I'll take him downstairs now. She walked over cautiously and gently pulled Sam away. I simply nodded, still unable to grasp the full situation. Ever since I woke up, the housekeeper's attitude toward me had been strange. almost as if she were afraid of me. And yet, no one would tell me my husband's name. I decided to look for clues myself. The bedroom was luxuriously decorated, but there were no wedding photos. No visible signs of another person living here. Could it be that I had one of those mysterious husbands who just sent money home every month but never actually showed up? As I stepped out of the bedroom, I finally realized I was in a 2-story villa. Downstairs, Sam was sitting quietly by the floor-to-ceiling window, working on a puzzle. The sunlight streamed in, casting a warm glow around him. His long eyelashes hung low as he focused, looking so obedient and well-behaved that my heart instantly melted. I rushed over to him, startling him in the process. "What are you playing with?" I asked enthusiastically. "Let's do it together." Sam's big eyes widened in shock, and he immediately straightened up as if being punished. He hesitantly called out, "Mom." I pulled him into my arms and planted a big kiss on his soft, fair cheek. He touched his face, looking a little surprised but happy. Judging by his reaction, I could guess that the me from 10 years later probably hadn't been very affectionate toward this child. Fortunately, Sam was still young and didn't hold grudges. After playing with him for a while, he quickly relaxed and started excitedly sharing his puzzle with me. "Sam, is this the only thing you play with?" I asked, puzzled. "Kids your age should have lots of toys." Sam carefully glanced at me before whispering, "Mommy used to say other toys were too noisy. You would get angry." Oh God, the me from 10 years later really was sick. That moment, the doorbell rang. It was Emily. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Was this really my tomboyish childhood best friend? She had grown out her hair and curled it into soft waves. Her makeup was flawless, her brows perfectly shaped. I exaggeratedly widened my eyes and gasped, "Wow, who are you? Gorgeous." Emily rolled her eyes at me. Meanwhile, Sam clearly recognized her and ran up excitedly, hugging her legs. "Auntie Emily." Emily affectionately patted his little head before turning to me. "Let's go upstairs and talk." I quickly led her back to my bedroom. Before she could even ask anything, I spilled out everything I had experienced so far. When I finished, Emily frowned, scrutinizing me carefully before asking, "How do you know you time traveled and didn't just lose your memory?" "I remember everything," I said firmly. "The last meal I ate before traveling was tomato stew at the school cafeteria. I can even remember the test I took 2 days before that, down to the exact questions. If I had amnesia, there's no way I'd still recall details like that." Emily raised an eyebrow but remained silent. She knew me well, probably as well as she knew herself. Feeling a little awkward, I hesitated before finally admitting, "Okay, the day before I traveled, I had just accepted Jason's confession." Emily's expression instantly darkened. She let out a cold laugh before launching into an explanation of everything that had happened over the past 10 years. As it turned out, my future self really was sick. I had developed bipolar disorder, and the reason? Jason, my ex. According to Emily, Jason had always pretended to treat me well in public, but behind the scenes, he had been emotionally tormenting me. By the time he realized something was wrong, it was already too late. I had completely lost myself. Later, Jason even accused Emily of seducing him, and in my unstable mental state, I had believed him and cut ties with Emily. Then, at 27, Jason dumped me. His new girlfriend? My former college roommate. I hadn't been able to handle the betrayal. That was when my bipolar disorder fully took over. I pressed a hand to my forehead, feeling the weight of it all. Damn, this really is the tragic life of Ava Monroe. Then, I looked up at Emily and asked, "So, who is my husband now?" Emily looked at me, hesitated for a moment, then finally said, "It's Ethan Joe." What? My mind went blank. Of all the possible outcomes, I never expected this. I had married Ethan Joe. The three of us, Emily, Ethan, and I, had practically grown up together. We lived in the same apartment building as kids and even attended the same school. Ethan had always been that legendary perfect child that parents love to compare their kids to. He was good-looking, smart, well-mannered, always helping old ladies cross the street and giving up his seat for the elderly. The more my parents praised him, the more he annoyed me. But as a wild little troublemaker, I couldn't help but secretly watch him all the time. I used to stare at him so much that he'd turn bright red from embarrassment. As we got older and those childish days passed, I did start to have a little crush on him, but the problem was, everyone else did too. There were so many girls who liked him that I didn't even dare to entertain the thought. Even when he showed signs of treating me differently, I brushed it off as nothing more than childhood friendship. Besides, he eventually went abroad. And now Emily was telling me that Ethan Joe had married me? This was more shocking than our national soccer team winning the World Cup. Then, another terrifying thought hit me. Emily, Sam is 4.5 years old, but I broke up with Jason when I was 27. So that means... Emily looked at me awkwardly before finally speaking. Back then, we had already cut ties, so I could only get bits and pieces of your life from others. What I heard was that Jason caught you and Ethan together in bed. I froze. And as for Sam, she hesitated. To be honest, I don't know. The sheer amount of information hitting me all at once made my brain short-circuit. So, what she was saying was, I might have married Ethan while carrying someone else's child? I suddenly felt lightheaded. No wonder there were no traces of another person in the bedroom. Ethan must absolutely despise me. But if he really hated me, why did he still agree to marry me? Wait a second. Emily, if Jason was the one who cheated on me, then how did he end up catching me and Ethan in bed? That doesn't make any sense. Even if I were capable of doing something like that, Ethan isn't that kind of person. Emily sighed. I don't know the details. From what I heard, Jason broke up with you first, but you refused to accept it. Then, somehow, he managed to catch you and Ethan together and used that to his advantage to shift the blame. I pressed my fingers against my temples. This entire situation sounded like a twisted soap opera. I let out a dry laugh and muttered, I feel like my brain is missing a crucial part. Emily patted my shoulder. Face reality. Sis, you were already brain dead after Jason played you. Then she grew serious. But Ava, whether you lost your memory or actually traveled through time, I just have one thing to say. Be good to Sam. I have no say in your relationship with Ethan, but that child. He's suffered enough. Ethan is always busy with work. He's gone for half the year. And you, well, you never cared about Sam at all. My heart clenched. His father might not be real, but his mother definitely was. My little angel. My precious Sam. From now on, you will know nothing but love. I immediately started making a plan in my head to shower him with all the love he had been missing. But before I could put my plan into action, Sam was suddenly sent off to preschool. So he had been on summer break before this. Private preschools like his didn't usually have mandatory vacations, but most of the kids came from wealthy families, and many parents preferred to take them on vacations during the break. Thinking back to how I had found Sam sitting alone downstairs, quietly working on his puzzle, I felt a sharp pang in my heart, like I had swallowed a lemon whole. I made a mental note to take him out somewhere fun in a couple of days. That evening, during dinner, Sam sat on his chair, swinging his little legs as he excitedly told me all about his day at school. After spending a few days together, he was no longer afraid of me, and for the first time, as we got ready for bed, Sam hesitated before softly asking, Mommy, can I sleep with you? He stood in front of me in his little dinosaur pajamas, looking up at me expectantly. I scooped him up into my arms and smiled. Of course, sweetheart. As he snuggled up beside me, he suddenly said, Mommy, tell me a bedtime story. I took the book and started making up a story. Once upon a time, there was a Prince Snow White. After listening, Sam giggled and declared, Sam is Prince Snow White. Mommy is the princess. When I grow up, I'm going to marry Mommy. I laughed and teased him. But Mommy already has Daddy. You can't marry me. Sam. I hadn't expected my words to make his little face suddenly fall. That's right. Ever since I arrived in this timeline, Sam had never once mentioned Ethan on his own. Did that mean Ethan wasn't good to him? Testing the waters. I gently asked, Do you not like Daddy? Sam shook his head furiously. I like Daddy, but his big, round eyes suddenly carried a hint of hesitation, like he was afraid of something. The meaning was clear. It wasn't that Sam didn't like Ethan. It was that I didn't. That didn't seem possible. Though, did I really hate him that much? The next morning, After the housekeeper took Sam to school, I decided to clean up some clutter around the house. While rummaging through the storage room, I unexpectedly found a wedding photo tucked away in a dusty corner. In the picture, my face was completely emotionless. I looked like a hollow puppet with no soul. Next to me, Ethan was smiling, but if you looked closely, there was a trace of loneliness in his eyes. It was an awful photo. I instinctively flipped the frame over, but as I did, something clattered to the floor. A small box had been hidden behind the picture. Curious, I opened it. Inside, I found Sam's birth certificate and a folded-up note, one of the little messages I used to pass to Ethan during class. And then there was a letter, a love letter, from 16-year-old Ethan Joe to 16-year-old Ava Monroe. For a moment, I didn't know how to feel. It was like biting into a dish of bitter melon, sour, bitter, and filled with an overwhelming sense of regret. This letter had arrived 16 years too late. I stared at it for a long time before quietly putting everything back where I found it. That afternoon, I went to pick Sam up from preschool. At the school gate, teachers led groups of children out one by one. It was funny how kids seemed to have a built-in radar. They could instantly spot their parents in a crowd. The moment Sam saw me, his eyes lit up. He waddled over like a little duck, his tiny face flushed with excitement. "Thank you for picking me up, Mommy." My heart instantly melted into a puddle. "From now on, Mommy will pick you up from school every day." "Okay." Sam's eyes sparkled. "Can you take me in the morning too?" I firmly shook my head. He pouted. "Why not?" "Because Mommy can't wake up in the morning." Before he could argue, a little girl ran over and looked up at me curiously. "Auntie, are you Jacob's mom?" I nodded. She studied me for a moment before blurting out, "Auntie, you're really pretty. But why have you never picked Jacob up before? The kids in class say you don't like him." Before I could respond, Sam clenched the hem of my shirt. His little face filled with frustration. "That's not true. Mommy likes me." The little girl glanced between us, looking uncertain. I quickly reassured them and led Sam home. But once we got back, I could tell he was feeling down. Wanting to cheer him up, I bought a bunch of my favorite snacks. Because let's be honest, kids have great taste. And promised him a big present for his birthday. His eyes lit up with excitement. "That's great. Daddy said he'll be home too." I froze. I had just found that old love letter today, and I hadn't even begun to process my feelings about Ethan. And now he was coming back. That night, following my mommy transformation plan, I decided to help Sam take a bath. But he absolutely refused. His big round eyes blinked at me seriously as he said, "I have a little pee-pee. Mommy doesn't. And I'm almost 5 years old. I can bathe myself." I pinched his chubby little hands. "Really? What if shampoo gets in your eyes? That'll hurt. Besides, you're still only 4.5. Sam hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly accepted my help. But the entire time, his face was bright red as he desperately covered himself. Soon, it was finally Sam's birthday. He was more excited than I had ever seen him. Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate. By midday, heavy rain started pouring down. Ethan's flight was scheduled to arrive in the afternoon, but I wasn't sure if he'd make it on time. Seeing Sam anxiously staring out the window, I called him over. "Come on, let's open your presents." I had prepared 5 gifts, hoping to make up for all the birthdays I had neglected before. No matter how mature Sam seemed, he was still just a child. And it didn't take long for him to get completely lost in the joy of his new toys. As I played with him, we were both giggling in an electric toy car, taking turns driving when he pouted. "Mommy, it's my turn now. You said we'd only play for a little while. Just a little longer. Okay, be a good boy," I teased. Just then, the front door opened. Instinctively, we both turned toward the entrance. Outside, the rain poured heavily. Ethan Joe stepped in from the storm, his suit soaked through. Sam shouted, "Daddy," and ran over excitedly. But Ethan didn't look at him first. His gaze landed directly on me. For a moment, we locked eyes across the room, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Even if I hadn't time traveled, I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. And I had to admit, him standing there in a fitted suit, rain-soaked, glasses slightly fogged up, was absolutely hitting all my weak spots. Handsome men in glasses, tailored suits. Who could resist? Snapping out of it, I awkwardly stammered, welcome back. But before I could process what was happening, Ethan took off his wet jacket, walked straight up to me, and pulled me into a hug. I completely froze. Wasn't this progressing a little too fast? His voice was low against my ear. Ava, I'm home. I resisted the urge to rub my ears and quickly hugged him back. Because really, how could this be considered taking advantage of him? We were husband and wife. After all, Ethan pulled back slightly, his expression unreadable as he studied me. But he didn't say anything. By the time I finished lighting the candles on Sam's birthday cake, Ethan had changed into dry clothes and come downstairs. I scratched my cheek awkwardly, trying to gather the courage to sing the birthday song. But for some reason, the words wouldn't come out. Sam, however, was keenly aware of the tension in the room. He glanced at me, then at Ethan, and loudly made his birthday wish. I wish that tonight, Mommy and Daddy will sleep with me. I pressed my lips together. Sam, my dear son, you're really something else. But before I could say anything, Ethan glanced at me, then calmly told Sam, wishes don't come true if you say them out loud. His response immediately dampened the mood. I had almost forgotten. Sam might not even be his child. I wasn't one to beat around the bush. So when Sam was out of earshot, I looked Ethan straight in the eye and said, Ethan, we need to talk. His face darkened instantly. I'm tired. Whatever it is. Let's talk tomorrow. What? Just earlier. He had hugged me at the door. And now he was acting all cold? I crossed my arms. If you don't talk to me, I'll go to your room later and unplug your water heater while you're showering. Despite what he had said, the next day came, and Ethan started avoiding me altogether. Every morning when I woke up, he had already left for work. You wake up at what time? Emily stared at me over her coffee, looking incredulous. I rubbed my nose. Around 9 or 10? That's normal, I said defensively. Emily raised an eyebrow. Do you like Ethan? I quickly took a sip of coffee to buy myself time. When Jason had pursued me back then, I agreed to date him because he was thoughtful, attentive, and, of course, good-looking. But my feelings for Ethan were different. Emily rolled her eyes. If you ask me, this whole mess is Ethan's fault. If he hadn't been so ridiculously reserved, that scumbag Jason wouldn't have had a chance. I nodded. You're absolutely right. Rather than blaming myself, I should be criticizing others instead. Just as I was about to continue ranting, my phone rang. 20 minutes later, I found myself standing outside Sam's preschool. Why? Because I had been called in by the teacher. Inside the office, Sam looked stubbornly defiant while another little kid bawled at the top of his lungs. The teacher explained that Sam had pushed the other child, causing him to fall and scrape his hand. The other kid's parents had already been contacted. I crouched down beside Sam and asked gently, what happened? Sam glanced at me, looking a little wronged. Then, burying his face into my chest, he mumbled. He insulted Mommy and wouldn't apologize. I frowned. Why would he say that about me? Just then, the other child's parents arrived. The father stormed in, shouting, who the hell dared to bully my son? It was a couple. The man gave me a once-over with a lecherous gaze. And before I could react, the woman's expression instantly soured. She scooped up her son and immediately lashed out. So you're Jacob's mom? Let me tell you, this isn't over. Do you even know what kind of person you are? How dare you let your kid bully my son? I raised an eyebrow. Jacob pushing him was wrong. But your son was the one who started it with his words. Seeing that he now had backup, the little boy immediately stopped crying. His eyes darted around before he blurted out, I didn't say anything bad. I just said Jacob's mom is pretty but a homewrecker. A mistress. A child wouldn't even know what a mistress was. Clearly, he had overheard adults saying it. I crouched down to his level and said in a calm, almost playful tone, hey, kiddo, did you know that children who say bad things get their tongues bitten off by big bad wolves at night? The boy clamped his mouth shut in an instant. His mother's face twisted in anger. He's just a child. Why are you scaring him? Then, as if trying to flaunt her superiority, She scoffed. My husband is the general manager of a big company. So what if our son insulted you? It's just words. She gave me a disdainful look before adding. And besides, was he even wrong? You were never around before. Who knows what kind of woman you are? I mimicked her gaze, looking her up and down. Then, with a smirk, I said, wow, ugly on the inside and out. No wonder your kid talks like this. Must be hearing barking at home every day. Her face turned red with rage. Who are you calling a dog? Before I could react, she suddenly lunged toward me, trying to grab Sam. Get over here and apologize to my son. I dodged to the side, shielding Sam. The teacher, seeing how things were escalating, quickly stepped in to stop the commotion. But the woman, unwilling to back down, found an opening and swung her hand toward my face. Just before the slap could land, a firm hand reached out and caught her wrist. You're here to solve a problem or start a fight? Ethan Joe's voice was calm, but his expression was ice cold. The man who had been standing by watching the drama unfold suddenly went pale. His eyes widened in horror. And Mr. Joe? He immediately yanked his wife back, frantically apologizing. Ethan narrowed his eyes. What a coincidence. I didn't expect to run into you here. Mr. Chun. Turns out, this so-called big company manager was actually a supplier for Ethan's company. He had a reputation for having terrible morals, and his wife was known for yelling and cursing at home, influencing their child's behavior. Ethan raised a hand, silencing the man's groveling. Mr. Chun, you didn't seem this apologetic earlier. From what I saw, you and your wife weren't here to resolve an issue. You were here to cause a scene. If I hadn't stepped in, that slap would have landed on my wife's face. The entire room fell silent. Ethan's voice remained cold. I heard Jacob pushed your son. Fine. Take him to the hospital for a checkup. We'll cover the medical expenses. But before that, shouldn't your family apologize to my wife and son? The couple immediately started bowing and apologizing, their earlier arrogance completely gone. I didn't like Sam seeing this kind of display, so I simply took his hand and left. Once we got home, I figured this was finally the perfect time to have a serious conversation with Ethan. But before I could say anything, he was already grabbing his keys. I have work to do. I need to head back to the office. Like hell he was getting away that easily. I didn't even hesitate. Sam, go get him. Sam immediately ran over and clung to his dad's leg like a koala. Ethan frowned. If this is about a divorce, can we not talk about it in front of Sam? I rolled my eyes, grabbed his wrist, and dragged him into the bedroom. The moment the door shut, I turned around and slammed my palm against the wall beside him, pinning him in place. His brows furrowed, but a faint pink crept up his cheeks. Honestly, I had to admit, he looked really attractive back there at the preschool, stepping in right at the perfect moment. His expression sharp and commanding. I tilted my head up, my voice dropping into a soft whisper. Husband. His face didn't change, but his ears turned red like a freshly steamed crab. I felt my own face heat up. Clearing my throat, I decided to just get straight to the point and explain the entire time travel situation. He listened quietly. After a long pause, he finally muttered, as hard as it is to believe, it actually makes sense. Then, after another moment, he added, I noticed something was off since Sam's birthday. I thought maybe your attitude changed because... His voice trailed off. Because you thought I was just trying to get on your good side before asking for a divorce? I finished for him. He didn't deny it. I hummed. So, did I really treat you that badly before? Instead of answering, he looked at me and asked, do you really want to know what happened that day? The day Jason caught us. I nodded. And also, Sam. Sam is my son. Ethan's voice was firm, leaving no room for doubt. I was stunned. Are you sure? He adjusted his glasses, avoiding my gaze. There's no question about it. He was lying. I could tell. I leaned in slightly and whispered, husband, married couples should be honest with each other. You know. At my words. He instinctively pushed up his glasses again, a clear sign that he was feeling flustered. Ethan finally spilled everything. So, for this emotionally repressed man, the word husband was basically the magic phrase to make him talk? From his somewhat vague explanation, I managed to piece together the truth. Jason had wanted to break up with me, but didn't want to take responsibility for it. So he set me up, making it look like I had cheated. In reality, Sam was Ethan's child, and we had married because of the pregnancy. But because of everything that had happened, I had resented him, and as a result, we had been living in separate rooms ever since our wedding. Well, Mr. Zhou, time to take down the Jason Corporation. Ethan shot me an amused glance and said, I did report it to the police at the time, but there was no solid evidence. And you kept insisting nothing had happened. Damn. In a way, Jason really was talented. He had somehow managed to dig out my brainstem and turn me into an idiot. What a masterpiece of a life mistake. Ethan and I ended up chatting for a long time after that. We talked about everything from when I used to blackmail him into buying me snacks as kids to how I had accidentally broken Sam's toy car just the other day. Curious, I suddenly asked, how did Sam get his nickname? Ethan hesitated for a moment before replying. His eyes flickered with a bit of embarrassment. I narrowed my eyes. Wait, is it from Thomas the Tank Engine? His lips parted slightly, then closed again. Finally, he admitted, it's from Thomas. Tommy. I glanced over at the Thomas the Tank Engine pajamas casually draped over the chair and held back a laugh. How could anyone not love this dork? That night, despite how long we talked, I didn't end up asking him to move back into the master bedroom. These things should happen naturally. Besides, he was already my husband. He wasn't going anywhere. As for Jason, I hadn't even gotten around to dealing with him when he suddenly announced a college reunion in our alumni group chat. And not only that, he actually tagged me. The moment I saw his message, I wanted to go slap myself in the bathroom mirror. Ava Monroe, how did you ever fall for that piece of trash? If I had known things would turn out like this, I would have thrown all my energy into chasing Ethan from the start. There was no question. I was definitely going to this reunion, but I wasn't going alone. I immediately told Ethan about it. He asked what I wanted to do. First, I'll gather some intel. Then, I'll settle old scores and return the favor. I patted his shoulder. Mr. Zhou, make sure to have my back. All right. Ethan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. On the day of the reunion, I had originally planned to just go with Ethan, but as luck would have it, the housekeeper had taken the day off, so we had to bring Sam along. Since plenty of people probably knew about what had happened between Jason and me, I worried they might say something inappropriate. To avoid any awkward situations, I asked Ethan to stay in the car with Sam while I went in first. As expected, the moment I showed up, a bunch of old classmates surrounded me. Some were offering sympathetic words, while others were clearly there just to gossip. I scanned the familiar faces. It was strange. Just a few years ago, we had all been so youthful and full of life. But now, time had left its marks on everyone. From their chatter, I managed to pick up some details about Jason's life. Apparently, my former college roommate had snagged him after coming into a fortune when her family's land got bought out. Now, he had started his own business, and from what I heard, it was doing decently well. Just as the gossip was reaching its peak, Jason and his wife arrived, and the moment I saw him, I had only one thought. Thank God I dodged that bullet. His receding hairline, bulging stomach, and bloated face made him look nothing like the so-called campus heartthrob he once was. And he actually had the audacity to tag me in that group chat? Jason walked up with a fake smile. Ava, it's been 5 years, and you're still as beautiful as ever. I forced a polite smile, said nothing, and immediately turned away. I had zero interest in playing some childish game of winning the breakup. I slipped into the restroom and called Ethan. Come get me. On the other end of the line, Ethan chuckled softly. On my way. Just as I stepped out of the restroom, I was startled by a shadow leaning against the wall. Ava. The shadow spoke. How have you been all these years? It was Jason. For a second, I almost thought someone had shoved a wardrobe in front of the bathroom door. He stared at me for a moment, and when I didn't respond, he even reached out, as if to grab my hand. I nearly jumped back 2 feet. Stay back. I'm allergic to ugly. Jason's face twisted for a moment before quickly smoothing over. Ava, are you still mad at me? I quickly cut him off before he could continue his nonsense. Waving my hands dramatically, I bowed to him 3 times on the spot. Thank you for not marrying me back then. I owe you a great debt. Then, before he could react, I bolted back to the reunion. As soon as I sat down on the couch, Jason followed me in. But right at that moment, the lively chatter in the room died down for a brief second before soft murmurs started spreading. Who's that guy? Damn, was he always this good-looking? Wait, was there really someone this handsome at our school back then? No way. Even Jason wasn't this good-looking in his prime. I turned toward the entrance. Ethan had arrived. I let out a relieved sigh and immediately got up to take his arm. Let me introduce you. This is my husband. Since Sam was still waiting for us in the car, we didn't stay much longer. But before we left, I couldn't help but take a final glance at Jason standing beside Ethan. They looked like 2 different species. That moment, I truly understood. There was no such thing as a battle between evenly matched men in this world. As we walked downstairs, Ethan teased, "So, is your revenge plan cancelled?" I pretended to be tipsy, resting my head lightly on his shoulder. In a soft voice, I murmured, "I've already won." The warm summer night breeze carried my words away. Since it was such a nice evening, I suggested we leave the car behind and take a walk as a family. Under the soft glow of streetlights, Sam bounced along beside us, happily singing some anime opening song at the top of his lungs. I turned to Ethan, leaned in, and whispered something in his ear. His eyes lit up, and he turned to look at me. His expression was identical to Sam's, bright and eager. I laughed and hooked my arm through his, then pointed at a row of public electric scooters ahead. "Hubby, I'm tired. Let's take one of those home." The affectionate look on Ethan's face instantly disappeared. He glanced at my dress and asked, "Are you sure?" I blinked at him innocently. With a resigned expression, he sighed, took off his suit jacket, and tied it around my waist. Then, dressed in just his dress shirt, he put Sam in front and me in the back before climbing onto the scooter. Sam had never ridden one before, and the entire way, his laughter rang through the night air. Unfortunately, we didn't even make it 2 miles before we were stopped by a traffic officer. Apparently, it was illegal to have more than 1 passenger on an electric scooter. So, we ended up getting fined $20 and still had to take a taxi home in the end. Some time later, I ran into Jason again. I had taken Sam out for some street food when the scent of freshly fried stinky tofu lured us to a corner stall. When I scanned the QR code to pay, I suddenly realized the person selling the stinky tofu was none other than Jason. He recognized me, too. His expression twisted as he started complaining about how his company had collapsed due to tax issues. His clients had all left, and his accountant had run off with the last of his money. He had been forced to shut down his business, drowning in debt. This disgusting man actually thought he could get sympathy from me. Even worse, he had the audacity to reach out as if to touch me. I resisted the urge to gag and instead smiled sweetly. "Don't worry, I'll definitely find a way to help you out." Then, after I had walked far enough away, I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Hello? I'd like to report an unlicensed street vendor." Not long after, I watched as the city inspectors arrived and confiscated his food cart. Tears welled up in my eyes. Such a shame. I had really been craving that stinky tofu. Since I had already promised Sam some junk food, I still let him indulge in grilled skewers, takoyaki, and fried flatbreads. Just as we were happily munching and watching the scene unfold, Ethan suddenly appeared and caught us red-handed. I gave him an innocent smile. "We didn't eat anything. We were just watching." Sam eagerly nodded in agreement. Yeah. Mommy and I totally didn't eat grilled skewers, takoyaki, or fried noodles." Ethan, clearly used to our antics, sighed and said, "Next time, just tell me if you want to eat something. Street food isn't clean." I nodded obediently while simultaneously adding more items to my mental food order. As the city lights flickered on, the 3 of us strolled home together. Side story back to the past. One moment, I was curled up in Ethan's arms, happily plotting to have a second child. The next moment, I opened my eyes, back in my college dorm room. Half asleep, I reached for my phone and answered a call. "Ava, baby, wake up. Your darling boyfriend is waiting downstairs on an empty stomach." My entire body stiffened. Who the hell was this greasy-sounding guy? Then it hit me. It was Jason. The mere thought of his future bald head and beer belly made me lose my appetite for the next 3 days. Without hesitation, I jumped out of bed, ran downstairs in front of everyone, and dumped him on the spot. Then, I immediately called Ethan. The phone rang for a long time before he finally answered. His voice was deep and low. "Hello." I suddenly remembered. Last night, I had just publicly announced my relationship with Jason. I cleared my throat and asked, "Ethan Joe, a million encounters, a step as vast as eternity. What exactly did you mean by that post you made this morning?" Ethan remained silent, his breathing steady. I rolled my eyes. Typical repressed man. "All right, I'll give you one chance. No questions. Just answer this. Do you want to date me with marriage as the goal?" There was a pause. Then he said, "Ava Monroe, I like you. I always have. So then, why didn't your love letter ever reach me? You'll find out in 10 years. Ethan exhaled lightly before adding, "Because that day, I overheard you in the classroom saying, I would never like Ethan Joe in this lifetime. That one moment of foolish pride had cost me 10 whole years." I took a deep breath. "Ethan, listen, I actually came back from 10 years in the future. I know it sounds crazy, but in that future, we're married. And yes, we even have a child." That revelation hit him so hard that he flew back from overseas that very night. Not only did he seriously confess to me all over again, but he also insisted on immediately taking me home to meet his parents. A year after graduation, we got married. We took beautiful wedding photos. And when I asked Emily to be my bridesmaid, she smugly told me, "Not bad. Ava, you really pulled through in the end." For a while, Ethan and I focused on our careers and didn't rush to have children. But then, when I turned 27, "Is it today?" Ethan whispered in my ear. Half asleep, I murmured, "Sam's birthday is today." Ethan froze for a moment. A drop of sweat rolled down his face. "There are 12 months in a year," he muttered. With my half-melted brain, I tried to process his words. "Pregnancy takes 10 months, he continued, rubbing my head gently. "So it should actually be 2 months from now." 12 months later, I safely gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. Ethan named him Jacob Joe. Crossed the river of time, beyond the limits of science and reason. No matter how many times I traveled through the years, I always found my way back to him. The first thing I did after being reborn was to break off my engagement with Ethan Lewis. In my previous life, I had spent most of my years exhausting myself for Ethan. But when I was bedridden with illness, he couldn't even wait for me to pass away. Behind my back, he was already planning a grand wedding with Lily White. Their wedding coincided with my funeral. This time, I refused to be so foolish. While Ethan was busy breaking ties with the Lewis family to avoid marrying me, and was running to the White family to serve Lily and her mother, I went straight to the Lewis estate. "Emily, marrying into the Lewis family was your grandfather's last wish. It was also a marriage arrangement decided long ago between our families," Mr. Lewis, the family patriarch, said as he pulled out a yellowed marriage contract. I read it over several times, my gaze eventually landing on the man standing behind him. "If I have to get married in half a month, then I'll marry him," I said, pointing to Liam Lewis. When I declared that I wanted to marry Liam, the entire room fell silent. Mr. Lewis looked utterly shocked. "Emily, marriage isn't a joke. You and Ethan were promised to each other from birth. You grew up together as childhood sweethearts. How can you suddenly refuse to marry him and instead say you want to marry Liam?" He wasn't wrong. Since childhood, I'd known that I would grow up to become Ethan's wife. For years, my greatest wish was to marry him, but he never loved me. In my previous life, Ethan only married me because of the Lewis family's arrangements. On our wedding day, the first words he said to me were, "Emily, since you insisted on marrying me, be prepared for me to never love you in this lifetime." At the time, I thought he was just angry. Surely, over time, feelings would grow. I refused to believe that after all these years, he felt nothing for me. Even after our marriage, I hoped his indifference would eventually melt away. But I was wrong. After we married, Lily moved to the South and became an unforgettable regret in his heart. Even when we were in our 60s, Ethan would sit in his study, staring at the love letters he had written to her in his youth, silently weeping. Before I died, he coldly told me, if it weren't for the promise I made to my grandfather, I would have divorced you long ago and married Lily. You ruined us. It was then I realized he didn't just fail to love me. He hated me to the core. He even went so far as to hold a grand wedding with Lily on the day of my funeral. This time, I will never repeat that mistake. Mr. Lewis, I'm not joking, I said firmly. When our families arranged this marriage, they only specified that I was to marry someone from the Lewis family. There was no rule that it had to be Ethan, was there? Liam Lewis was Mr. Lewis's youngest son, born when he was over 50 years old. He was only 5 years older than Ethan. In my previous life, Liam left the Lewis family and moved abroad after Mr. Lewis passed away. I heard he never married. My impression of Liam was vague. He was a quiet and reserved man, always mature beyond his years. Unlike Ethan, he didn't seem to carry the burden of unrequited love or secret infatuations. If I had to marry someone, I might as well choose a man who could treat me with mutual respect. That was far better than a marriage filled with resentment. Mr. Lewis sighed when he saw my determination. You make a valid point, but we still need to hear Liam's thoughts on this. Liam stood tall and composed, his white shirt impeccably pressed without a single crease. When I noticed him furrow his brows, my heart skipped a beat. In my haste to escape Ethan's nightmare, I had completely overlooked whether Liam would accept. But to my surprise, Liam finally spoke. As long as you've thought it through, I have no objections. Hearing this, Mr. Lewis immediately broke into a smile. Great. Then the wedding will proceed as planned in half a month. Everything at the Grand Horizon Hotel is already arranged. I told you I won't marry Emily. Before Mr. Lewis could finish speaking, Ethan burst through the door, anger radiating from him. He shot me a look of utter disdain before turning to his grandfather. Grandpa, this is the modern age. Childhood betrothals are an outdated, feudal tradition. If you don't let me marry Lily, I'll never come back to the Lewis family again. Mr. Lewis slammed the table in anger, his response drowning out the radio playing in the background. How many times do I have to tell you? A woman like Lily, who had a child out of wedlock, has no place in the Lewis family. Do you have any idea how much ridicule my old comrades put me through because of your behavior? You're embarrassing this family. Ethan, utterly blinded by his obsession with Lily, refused to tolerate anyone criticizing her, even if it was his grandfather. I don't care what you say. In this life, I'll only ever marry Lily. If you don't approve, I'll move into the dorms at work and never set foot in the Lewis house again. As Ethan stormed past me, he sneered venomously. You can go ahead and complain to Grandpa all you want. It won't make a difference. I'm never going to marry you. You'd better give up on that idea. It turns out Ethan thought I had come to the Lewis estate to pressure him into marrying me. Little did he know, my greatest wish in this life was to stay as far away from him as possible. Don't go after him, Mr. Lewis called out to the butler, taking a sip of tea to calm his frustration. He's spoiled beyond reason. If he wants to sever ties with this family over a woman, then let him. True to his word, Ethan moved out of the Lewis estate and into his dorm at work. At the school cafeteria, I often saw him with Lily. Some colleagues who were close to me voiced their indignation. Emily, it's bad enough that Mr. Lewis brought Lily into our school as a substitute teacher. Now that they're planning to get married, they're practically inseparable. Anyone who doesn't know better would think she's the one marrying him. I merely smiled faintly and continued eating my lunch, not bothering to respond. What? A colleague asked, leaning in closer. It doesn't matter, I replied softly, shaking my head. I wasn't about to stir up any drama before marrying Liam. As for Ethan and Lily, they no longer had anything to do with me. Since I wasn't marrying Ethan, I had no reason to stay in the new house Mr. Lewis had prepared for us. Out of sympathy, he had allowed me to live there alone because it was close to the school and in a safe neighborhood. Now that things had changed, I decided to move out. But when I returned to pack my belongings, I found them tossed haphazardly into the hallway. Miss Taylor, you're back. I'm so sorry, but Ethan asked me to move in with my daughter. There wasn't enough space. So I had to put your things in the hallway for now. Lily stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, dressed in a floral print dress. Her posture exuded the air of a hostess. You know how crowded these apartment blocks can be. Ethan couldn't bear to see us struggling, so he asked you to move out. I hope you don't mind the inconvenience. In my previous life, Ethan had done the same thing, bringing Lily into our new home and forcing me out. Back then, I had been devastated, heartbroken, and demanded answers from him, screaming and crying about why he would let another woman sleep in our home. His response? A cold, mocking laugh. We're not even married yet. When did you get the right to dictate anything about a Lewis family property? This time, I felt nothing. Without a word, I quietly began gathering my belongings. My silence seemed to unsettle Lily. You're not jealous? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Aren't you afraid Ethan will end up marrying me instead of you? I looked up, my gaze cold as ice. A whore and a dog. A match made in heaven. Lily's face turned red with anger as tears welled up in her eyes. Who are you calling a whore? She screamed. That moment, Ethan appeared. Seeing Lily crying, he immediately jumped to conclusions. Emily, all she asked was for you to move out temporarily. Did you really have to bully her like this? Or is it that you're just after the Lewis family's money and can't stand losing your meal ticket? Ethan's arrogance and self-importance were unbearable. Once he made up his mind, no one could change it. I didn't want to waste another moment entangled with them. Without a word, I turned and walked away. I could still hear Ethan shouting behind me, his voice sharp and relentless. Emily Taylor, a woman like you doesn't stand a chance of marrying me. Don't even dream about it. I'm not going to the wedding in half a month. You can count on being humiliated. After moving back to the employee dormitory, I avoided any interaction with Ethan and Lily. Still, rumors about the two of them flooded the school. Every time I passed by, I could feel the pitying stares from my colleagues. A week later, the principal summoned me to his office, looking grave as he gestured to a letter on his desk. Miss Taylor, someone has filed a report accusing you of plagiarism during the teacher's writing competition. This is a serious matter, and the higher-ups are paying close attention. The accusation came out of nowhere, and I felt completely blindsided. Principal, every single word in that article was my own. How could it possibly be plagiarism? And who exactly did I plagiarize? The principal sighed, clearly frustrated. The accuser provided drafts and outlines as evidence. Even if I wanted to suppress this, I can't. I think it's best if you take a few days off while this is being addressed. The words hit me like a thunderclap. Numbly, I stumbled out of the office, only to see Lily standing nearby, a smug smile curling her lips. In that instant, everything clicked. Most of my belongings had been left in the new house. Other than Lily, there was no one else who could have taken my drafts to accuse me of plagiarism. It was you, I said, glaring at her. Lily didn't even try to deny it. Seeing that no one was around, she smirked. Yes, it was me. So what? It's your fault for leaving your things lying around. My hands trembled with anger, but Lily only looked more pleased with herself. Emily, you took my man, so don't blame me for taking your job. If you don't leave, how am I supposed to get promoted from a substitute to a full-time teacher? So that's what this was all about. As I was about to argue further, the principal called her into his office, leaving me no choice but to file an appeal. However, when I brought the matter to the higher-ups, they told me, we already have proof that your work plagiarized an original submission. All you can do now is wait for the decision. The decision came quickly. I was fired. The principal told me that if it weren't for my prior contributions to the school, they would have made an example of me in a public disciplinary meeting. How laughable. The real author was expelled, while the plagiarist basked in success and received a promotion. That same evening, Ethan held a celebratory dinner for Lily's promotion. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. When I arrived, I picked up a glass of wine and poured its contents directly onto Lily's head. Gasps filled the room, and Ethan grabbed me, dragging me out of the restaurant. Emily Taylor, are you insane? It's just a teaching position. Lily is a single mother. Do you know how hard her life is? Can't you just let her have it? If you still want to marry me, stop making things difficult for her. So Ethan knew all along that I was the one who had been plagiarized. In fact, it was likely that he was the one who helped Lily fabricate the evidence. Without thinking, I slapped him hard across the face. Ethan Lewis, you make me sick. Don't worry, I wouldn't marry you in 1,000 lifetimes. Ethan, however, dismissed my words as mere spite. In his mind, he was so certain of my devotion that he believed I could never truly let him go. I thought he'd never admit fault, let alone apologize. But 3 days later, Ethan did something I never expected. He came to me to make amends. Emily, Lily just wanted to stay at the school so badly that she acted impulsively and took your drafts. I'm here to apologize on her behalf. After being fired, I returned to my old apartment in the crowded tenement block. When Ethan came to see me, he looked uneasy standing in the bustling courtyard. Lily's been reported for getting her position at the school through backdoor connections. I admitted to pulling some strings, but Lily has the ability to hold her position, doesn't she? Ethan argued. Her ability? I scoffed coldly. You mean the ability to accept bribes from parents or turn a blind eye to the children of wealthy families? I stayed silent after that, simply staring at Ethan. If you come forward and confirm that Lily wrote that article and that you plagiarized it, she'll be able to stay, he pleaded. It was the first time Ethan ever apologized to me, but it was for another woman. Worse, he had the audacity to make such a shameless request. Get out, I said, turning my face away, unwilling to waste another word on him. The day after tomorrow was my wedding with Liam, and there was still so much to prepare. I had no time for this nonsense. Ethan, however, seemed wounded, as though his pride had been cut. It must have been you who reported her, right? He accused. Emily Taylor, you're such a despicable woman. Let me tell you, if you help her this one time, I'll agree to marry you. You'd better think carefully about this. To Ethan, marrying me was apparently some kind of charity. Unfortunately for him, I didn't care. The next day, a close colleague insisted on taking me out for a meal. You know how foreigners love their bachelorette parties. Let's give you one too, she said playfully. Unable to turn her down, I went with her to a restaurant. While heading to the restroom, I overheard a familiar voice coming from the private room next door. It was Ethan's. If it weren't for Lily, I'd never agreed to marry that woman. Just looking at her makes me sick, he said. Peeking through the slightly open door, I saw Ethan with his arm wrapped around Lily, speaking with a sickening devotion. Don't worry, I'll never love anyone but you. Marrying her tomorrow is just to placate my grandfather and keep you in the school. Lily blushed and leaned shyly into his chest while their friends teased them. Emboldened by a few glasses of low-alcohol wine, Ethan seemed completely shameless. For a moment, I felt a sharp sting of betrayal. I thought I was numb to Ethan's behavior, but hearing him belittle me so casually in front of another woman still hurt. So this was Ethan in his 20s. Arrogant, foolish, and utterly laughable. How had I spent decades married to this man? A bitter smile crept onto my lips as I whispered to myself, Ethan, your presence at tomorrow's wedding won't be needed. The next day, my wedding to Liam proceeded as planned. Guests initially seemed startled when they realized the groom wasn't Ethan, but the prestige of the Lewis family kept them from commenting. Instead, they offered polite smiles and words of congratulations. As Liam and I made the rounds to toast the guests, Ethan arrived late, accompanied by Lily in a long red dress. It was exactly like my past life. Back then, Ethan had intentionally disappeared on our wedding day, turning me into a public joke. If not for Mr. Lewis stepping in to maintain order, I might have broken down entirely. Not only that, but Ethan had brought Lily to the ceremony dressed in an outfit similar to mine, standing boldly by his side for all to see. It was a blatant humiliation that I had swallowed in silence in my previous life. But this time was different. Ethan's expression turned to shock when he saw Liam standing beside me, dressed as the groom. Uncle Liam, why are you wearing a groom's suit? Liam raised an eyebrow and replied calmly, because I'm the groom. What did you expect me to wear? But look at yourself. Reek of alcohol and still in yesterday's clothes. What kind of impression are you trying to make? Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief, his expression frozen. What's going on? Isn't today my wedding day? Ethan demanded, his voice trembling with disbelief. Mr. Lewis chuckled coldly, slamming his cane against the floor with a resounding thud. You didn't want to get married, didn't you? Well, now you've gotten your wish. What are you complaining about? Ethan shook his head in frustration, then turned sharply toward me. Emily Taylor, did you say something to Grandpa and Uncle Liam? Or did you pull some kind of trick? I knew you couldn't be trusted. Before I could respond, Liam stepped forward, placing himself protectively in front of me. His voice carried an unyielding authority. Emily Taylor is not someone you can address so casually. Based on seniority, you should be calling her aunt. Ethan stumbled back in shock, nearly knocking Lily off balance. Ethan, this is wonderful, Lily exclaimed, her face alight with hope. If your grandfather isn't forcing you to marry Emily, then we can finally get married. Her words practically screamed her ambition to marry into the Lewis family. But before she could finish, Mr. Lewis snorted derisively. Not just anyone can marry into the Lewis family. Ethan, if you want to bring in a woman like her, it'll only happen over my dead body. Lily's face crumpled as tears began streaming down her cheeks. She bit her lip, clearly unable to accept the humiliation. Ethan, you promised to marry me. How can you let your family insult me like this? Ethan hesitated, caught between Lily's pleas and his grandfather's unyielding stance. The surrounding guests began whispering, pointing at Lily. Isn't she that girl from the White family? Didn't she run off with some man years ago and come back pregnant? I heard her parents were so furious they passed away. And now she wants to marry into the Lewis family? Doesn't she know her place? Lily's face flushed an angry red. Stamping her foot, she turned and ran out, covering her face with her hands. Only then did Ethan seem to snap out of his daze. He turned to Mr. Lewis, demanding, why didn't anyone tell me the groom had changed? Why wasn't I informed? Mr. Lewis glared at him, his tone icy. I called your school multiple times, but you refused to answer, thinking I was forcing you to come back and marry. I even sent letters, but you returned every single one. Ethan's face turned ghostly pale. Ethan stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. In the end, he chose to chase after Lily. Fortunately, the unpleasant disruption didn't affect the overall flow of the wedding. That evening, I sat on the bed draped in bright red sheets, my face burning as I finally voiced a question that had been bothering me. Was it you who reported Lily to the higher-ups? There was no one else who could have intervened so decisively. Only Liam had the power and connections to ensure Lily was removed from the school. Liam nodded quietly, his expression calm as ever. You married me. I won't let you be wronged again. I've also spoken to the school. If you want, you can return to teaching whenever you're ready. His words warmed my heart. But this time, I hesitated. It wasn't because I'd have to face Ethan at school. In my previous life, I'd worked there until retirement, only to realize I didn't truly love teaching. I'd like to try applying to a newspaper instead, I confessed, voicing the thought that had been on my mind. I worried Liam, like many men, might disapprove of his wife working outside after marriage. But to my surprise, Liam simply said, do whatever you like. If that's what makes you happy, go for it. If it doesn't work out, I'm here for you. Encouraged by his support, I carefully slipped my prepared manuscript into a narrow slot on the mailbox. If the submission was accepted, it would give me an edge in the newspaper's interview process. As I walked past the department store, I suddenly remembered that Liam seemed to own nothing but white shirts, so I decided to pick out some fabric for him. To my dismay, I ran into Ethan and Lily at the fabric shop. Lily was clinging to Ethan's arm, pointing at the fabric I had just chosen. This one. Wrap it up for me, she told the shop assistant. My mood instantly soured. Even the fabric I had admired moments ago now seemed dull and unappealing. I quietly slipped the fabric coupon back into my pocket, then turned to the shop assistant with a polite smile. Give it to her. Some people just enjoy taking what others don't want. Lily bristled like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Don't act so high and mighty just because you can't have him. You didn't seem so dignified when you were chasing after Ethan like a lovesick puppy. I glanced at Ethan, looking him up and down with a faint smirk. Charming, isn't he? Ethan, who had remained silent until now, suddenly looked grim. Emily Taylor, don't think you're so special just because you married my uncle. You only managed that because of that old marriage contract. Lily's different. She loves me for who I am and doesn't care about my family's wealth. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a flicker of awkwardness on Lily's face, but she quickly masked it. She leaned sweetly on Ethan's shoulder, as if the world revolved around him. You know, we should thank you, Emily. Without you, Ethan and I wouldn't have been able to end up together. We're family now. When the baby arrives, don't forget to come to the celebration. Lily gently placed a hand on her stomach, her expression glowing with mock maternal affection. She was trying to provoke me, but her intentions were transparent. It was clear she was hoping to use the baby to secure her place in the Lewis family. I couldn't help but sneer. And here I thought dogs might change their ways. Is having a child out of wedlock supposed to be something to brag about? A few years ago, both of you would have been thrown into jail for this. With that, I walked past them without another word. True to form, it wasn't long before Ethan started pestering Mr. Lewis to let him marry Lily. I've already told you, as long as I'm alive, that woman will never set foot in my house. Mr. Lewis roared, his anger making him short of breath. Ethan, however, was as stubborn as ever. Grandpa, it's the modern age. People believe in free love now. Besides, Lily is carrying my child. That baby is a member of the Lewis family. Instead of softening, Mr. Lewis grew even angrier. A child conceived out of wedlock? That's nothing but a bastard. How did our family raise someone as shameless as you? His fury boiled over, and he struck Ethan's leg with his cane. If you're so determined to marry her, then get out of my house and don't ever come back. Ethan was kicked out of the Lewis estate, and he ended up holding a small wedding with Lily in the house that was once supposed to be ours. The only attendees were his drinking buddies. Ethan had always basked in the respect others showed him as a Lewis, but now that he had severed ties with the family, people stopped treating him with the same regard. Even Lily soon began complaining incessantly. How can you call yourself a man when your teacher's salary can't even buy a decent length of fabric? Her nagging grew worse as time went on. It didn't take long before Ethan came crawling back to Mr. Lewis, begging for forgiveness. But Mr. Lewis was a man of his word. He sent his reply through a guard. You can come back with the child, but that woman will never step through these doors. Ethan was left standing outside the estate, not allowed even a single step inside. Meanwhile, I received notice from the newspaper. I had been hired and would start work next month. Life finally seemed to be looking up. Without Ethan in my life, the world felt brighter and freer. One day after work, as I walked home, I overheard some colleagues gossiping nearby. Have you heard? That grandson from the Lewis family got cheated on. Yeah, I heard too. The guy involved was the principal from the school next door. Caught in bed. No less. And they say when the wife caught them, Lily and the principal didn't even have clothes on. Hearing that, I couldn't suppress a smirk. It seemed karma had finally caught up with Lily and Ethan. Such a scandal, in an era with limited entertainment, spread like wildfire. The principal's wife, a fiery woman, caught them in bed together and sat on the floor wailing loudly, ensuring every neighbor nearby heard every detail. Lily's affair with the principal was clearly an attempt to return to her teaching job. After all, Ethan's salary could barely support her and her daughter, let alone provide for the baby she was carrying. This wasn't a minor issue. The principal's wife called her family, who dragged both Lily and the principal to the police station. The principal, accused of inappropriate relationships, was fired from the school. Lily, being pregnant and unemployed, was let off with a warning after a brief scolding. But the principal's wife wasn't done. She took her revenge to Ethan's doorstep, throwing buckets of waste at his house and employing every disgusting tactic she could think of to humiliate them. Ethan, already embarrassed by Lily's actions, couldn't take it anymore. He finally knelt before Mr. Lewis, his pride shattered. Grandpa, I was wrong, Ethan admitted, bowing his head in a rare display of submission. Though still angry, Mr. Lewis couldn't bear to completely abandon his grandson. Ethan was allowed back into the family, but the entire ordeal made any interaction with him deeply uncomfortable for me. Emily, I was wrong about everything. I didn't realize Lily was that kind of woman, Ethan said awkwardly, his voice filled with regret. In my memory, Ethan had always been proud and self-assured. Even as he aged, But now, he seemed 10 years older. His back hunched under the weight of the rumors and humiliation. It's all in the past, I said lightly, my tone devoid of emotion. Once, I might have hated Ethan. But now, as I stood by Liam's side, doing work I loved and watching Ethan reap what he had sown, I realized I didn't care enough to hate him anymore. You only hate the things you care about. Indifference had replaced that anger. Emily. Ethan hesitated before continuing. I know there's no real affection between you and my uncle. The mistakes I made in the past. Let's fix them. You and I. We were childhood sweethearts. If you're willing to divorce him, I can. Stop. I cut him off sharply. Do you think I'm some object you can summon or discard at will? How pathetic that only after being abandoned and humiliated, you finally thought of me. I looked him directly in the eye, my tone firm and unwavering. Ethan, I'm happy now. Who says I don't have feelings for Liam? He's 1,000 times. No. 10,000 times better than you. And don't forget your place. Next time we meet, address me as Aunt. With that, I turned and walked away, not sparing him a single glance. It was time to discuss moving out with Liam. Living under the same roof as my ex-fiancé wasn't exactly ideal, and I didn't want to become the subject of gossip. As I rounded the corner, a pair of strong arms suddenly pulled me into a warm embrace. It was Liam. We'll move out, he said firmly. I wasn't sure how long he'd been listening, but his tone was resolute. I looked up at him, teasing. Are you jealous? Liam didn't reply, but I caught sight of the faint redness on his ears. The move went smoothly. Mr. Lewis, ever understanding, had no objections when Liam informed him of our decision. But just as we were finalizing the move, an unwelcome visitor showed up at the Lewis estate. Ethan Lewis, get out here. Lily's voice rang out, shrill and piercing. Her stomach was noticeably round now. Her floral dress strained against her growing figure, looking ill-fitted on her swollen frame. You're responsible for my pregnancy, Lily shouted, her tone both accusatory and desperate. You left me out here, alone and pregnant. Have you no shame? If you don't come out, I'll report you for harassment. I'll barge in if I have to. Let's see who dares to stop me with my pregnant belly. At the Lewis estate gates, the security guards exchanged troubled glances but firmly held their ground, barring Lily from entering. Just as Lily was about to launch into another tirade, Ethan finally appeared. You dare show your face here? Ethan snarled, his face flushing with anger. You've been out disgracing yourself, and now you have the nerve to come to my family's home. Ethan's face was a deep red, his rage barely contained. If it weren't for the guards holding him back, he might have done something rash. Disgrace myself? Everything I've done was for our family. Lily shot back, her voice shrill. Do you think I'd have stayed with you if you weren't part of the Lewis family? You're nothing but trash, cast out by your own kin. If I can't go back to teaching, how are we supposed to survive on your measly salary? Should we starve? Ethan seemed stunned, as if he was seeing Lily's true colors for the first time. He opened his mouth but couldn't form a response. I stood off to the side, watching the chaos for a moment, but quickly lost interest. Their back and forth was pathetic, and I had more important things to do, like finishing the move. Just as I turned to leave, Lily darted toward me, grabbing my arm tightly. Emily Taylor, this is your doing, isn't it? You're the reason Mr. Lewis won't let me into the family. Her grip was firm, and I couldn't immediately shake her off. I glanced around, searching for Liam, but he was nowhere in sight. Panic crept in. What are you talking about? Let go, I demanded, but Lily ignored me, her voice growing more venomous. Seeing me like this must make you so happy, doesn't it? Just because you married Liam doesn't mean you're any better than me. At the end of the day, we're both women who rely on men to climb up in the world. If I'm miserable, don't think you'll have it easy either. With a hateful glare, Lily shoved me hard. Whether it was intentional or not, I stumbled and hit my head against a stone. Darkness consumed my vision. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Liam's guilt-ridden face. His normally smooth chin was covered in stubble, and the fatigue in his eyes made it clear he hadn't rested in a long time. Emily, you're awake. I'm so sorry. I didn't protect you like I should have. I swear I'll never let anything happen to you again. Are you in pain? Does your head still hurt? It was the first time I'd heard Liam say so much at once. I couldn't help but smile slightly, shaking my head. As I tried to sit up, Liam jumped up from his chair, fumbling to adjust my pillow, hand me water, and tuck the blanket around me. Watching him flustered like that, I couldn't resist teasing him. I just fell. It's no big deal. At worst, I'll have a scar on my head. But Liam's face flushed red, and he hesitated before finally stammering. You're about to become a mom. You need to take care of yourself. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. My heart raced as I stared at him, searching for confirmation. What did you just say? Are you serious? We're having a baby. Liam nodded, over and over, his expression gentle but filled with joy. The realization washed over me. I was pregnant. For the first time in 2 lifetimes. I was going to be a mother. Happiness surged through me, almost surreal in its intensity. That bliss was interrupted by a knock at the door. Uncle Liam, I need to talk to her. Ethan's voice called out from outside. Liam looked at me, silently asking for permission. I gave him a reassuring nod, and he reluctantly left the room. Before he closed the door, I noticed the edge of Ethan's coat peeking around the corner. Emily, I'm sorry, Ethan said as he stepped in, his voice heavy with guilt. I never imagined she would hurt you like that. I stayed silent, watching him with an unreadable expression as he continued. I know I've done so many things to hurt you in the past. These past few days, I've been reflecting on everything that happened between us and finally realized your worth. But now, it's too late. The words Ethan spoke barely registered with me. I had already said everything I needed to during our last conversation. He should know by now that once I make a decision, I don't change my mind, especially now that I'm carrying Liam's child. So his visit clearly wasn't just about an apology. Seeing that I remained silent, Ethan finally revealed the true reason for his visit. I know you won't forgive me, but I'm begging you. Please help Lily. Grandpa is furious, and her life is going to be miserable from now on. But she's pregnant with my child. That baby is a Lewis. Please, Emily, I'm asking you to talk to Grandpa on her behalf. His face was etched with pain. His eyes filled with desperation as he pleaded with me. Please, Emily, I swear I'll make it up to you. Looking at him, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of pity. Ethan wasn't just betrayed. He had been made a complete fool. But my sympathy didn't extend to protecting his so-called innocence. I let out a faint chuckle, which seemed to light a flicker of hope in Ethan's eyes. However, my next words extinguished it completely. Since you're my nephew, I'll give you some advice as an elder. You should get a paternity test. And if that's not possible, maybe you should have your own health checked. I paused, remembering how in my previous life, despite Ethan's lack of affection for me, we still had the closeness of a married couple. Yet, we never had children. Not because of me, but because of him. He was infertile. So when I learned of Lily's pregnancy back then, I knew immediately that Ethan had been thoroughly deceived. In the past, I chose to stay silent, thinking it wasn't my problem. But now that Lily had come after me, I saw no reason to hold back. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief at my words. He stammered, questioning why I would say such a thing. At first, he dismissed it as nonsense. But as he continued to press me for answers, I stayed silent. The more I refused to elaborate, the more shaken he became. Eventually, he lost all composure and ran out like a madman. The next time I heard Ethan's name, it was in the newspaper. He had killed Lily. In the very house that was once meant for our marriage, he had lit a brazier and died alongside her. By the time anyone discovered them, they were already gone. Ethan likely wouldn't have resorted to such an extreme measure, but when he confronted Lily, she shouted about his infertility for the entire neighborhood to hear. Within days, the scandal spread across most of the city. Ethan, unable to endure the humiliation, took both their lives. Mr. Lewis, having to bury his grandson, aged visibly from the grief. Liam and I had wanted to bring him to live with us so we could take care of him, but he refused, saying it was enough for us to visit him when we could. And then, my young granddaughter tilted her head, her pigtails bouncing against her shoulders, looking absolutely adorable. Before I could finish the story, a voice called out from the kitchen. Stop telling stories and come eat. I made your favorite, sweet and sour fish. I smiled, brushing a hand gently against my granddaughter's cheek. And then Grandpa called us to dinner, I said, taking her tiny hand in mine as we walked toward the living room. There, I saw Liam holding a platter of sweet and sour fish, smiling warmly at me.